And I've always drawn everything every day, all the time. Like things I'm going through, things I'm thinking about, something I hear that I then get like a vision for or like an idea for that I draw. It's like a way for me to sort of process my feelings and emotions, I guess.
Welcome to the Fine Fruit Bowl, a platform dedicated to the discussion and exploration of art and the creative process. And for this week's episode, I had a conversation with the amazing Louise Nordh. Louise creates paintings that are precise and ambiguous, often featuring a recurring anonymous female figure who finds herself in a wide range of different scenarios. Her use of bright and considered colours acts as a perfect lure for the viewer's eye, but it's not until you look closely that you realise it's just a thin veneer that creates the deeply personal themes in her work. So I'll start with ourselves, everybody, which you just tell us a bit about yourself and how you became an artist.
So I've basically always been drawing my whole life since I was a kid. It's all I did. And it was like, we used to have this like friends book at school where you'd write, it was called, I think, My Friends. I'm from Sweden, so I don't know if you had a similar thing here. But it's like all of the kids have these like little, almost like interview books for your friends. And then it was all these questions like, what's your favorite color and what's your favorite food, and what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always said an artist, but then I guess my parents were always really supportive, my family, but I would sort of always get the advice that you should have like a real job and then do art as a hobby. I didn't really think of it of like being an artist as an option for a living, making a living. But so I just continued to do it as a hobby, and like I would do like little commissions for friends, and I'd do things for people's weddings, and then I got I studied graphic design, and then I got a job as a graphic designer, and then I would get also jobs as like at my first job they would often give me like the illustration jobs to do, so I got to like use illustration and also graphic design as creative, so I felt like I got an outlet for the creative bit in my job. And yeah, so that was sort of how I did it, and up until I applied for the other art fair a year ago. But like until then I didn't really think that I could do it as a job. I thought it would be like a hobby on the side.
So what actually, this is very premature, but what actually made you apply for the art fair then?
I saw it on Instagram. It kept popping up on my Instagram, and my partner said, why don't you apply? And like, because I'd never applied to an art fair before, ever.
Really?
Yeah, never.
Wow.
And he said, why don't you apply? And I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to apply. And then I checked on the website, and I missed the deadline by like 2 days. And then they had a later deadline for this thing called like New Futures. And then the criteria was that you had to be an unestablished artist and that you hadn't exhibited your work of this style before anywhere. And that was it, and then you could apply. So I applied for that, and they did say, well, it's quite competitive because we only taken like two people on this. There's only two winners. So I applied just thinking, no way I'm ever gonna get in. But I still wanted to apply. Then I got in. I remember when I got the email, I was on the phone to my boyfriend, And I was like, oh my God. And then I turned the phone off and I just squealed.
Yeah.
And then he quit, like I turned it back on, like unmute again. He's like, what's happened? so shocked. But yes, it was the first time I applied. But I didn't think I was going to get in. But it was, I'm very happy that I did.
That's really amazing because, like, luckily, I've got, I've been able to see your work in person, and it's really cool because it's a very different experience to like having seen it online.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I think completely different. I still liked your work if I saw it online, but I wouldn't have understood it in the way that I understand it, staying in front of it and actually looking at it and being like, all the crisp lines and all the detail and all kind of, like how accurate it is. And, there's a lot to be spoken for when it comes to seeing art in real life, which is why I like going to the art fairs and stuff, which is why when I saw your work, I was like, I must interview Louise. It'd be absolutely amazing to do so. Because I saw your work and I was like, I absolutely love it, the color palette and stuff. We'll get into all this later, but like stuff like the color palette is like, it's funny for me because your work seems so considered and together for somebody who's only just had their first showing. It's kind of interesting, actually. I know you had, and you had the setup, you had all the purple, you had the Parma violets, you had everything. It was really good. Like I really kind of like, I personally I gravitated towards that because I'm like, you have a clue of who you are as an artist, you have an established identity, at least in your own mind. And I think that's actually what drew me to you and your work. And then the fact your work is good as well also helped.
Thank you. We met, I think we met on my second art fair. So I think that's one. No, I had the sweets on the first one as well. But I think I had a bit more. I had earrings when we met, and I also had the prints, which I didn't have on the first.
Yeah, it was just, I think it was very kind of just like eye-catching. Because I feel like I think that's the problem with the art fair as well, is that because there are so many artists there, you have to kind of stand out because it's hard because there's so much good art there. And it's kind of, and so many people walk through as well. So it's one of those where like, you have to kind of stand out. And I feel like you absolutely did. I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Thank you. That's so lovely. That's so nice because you never know. Like I did my third in the summer, and I think I'm equally as nervous as I was on my first one. On the first day, I'm terrified. I'm like, oh my God, what if people hate it?
They weren't though, but they weren't though.
Sorry?
They weren't though. And the good thing is that like people are there to look at art. They're there because they like art. They're there because they're interested in like what the next kind of talent is. So it's a nice environment to be in because people aren't going to hate it. They're not there for that reason. They're there to discover.
Yeah, it is great. But I guess it's the and you're right, people do go because they enjoy art. But I guess it's the fear of maybe not hating it. I don't think people are going to go and be like, oh, that's absolutely awful. But maybe just no one will care. Like that is people might just look at it and be like, meh, and walk past, because there is so much good art there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But then I kind of feel like you have to remember, like, without sounding, too dire, like in life, like nobody cares generally in life in that sense.
Very true.
When you think about it like that, think about it in like a more of a broader way. But no, but it's also true.
Yeah, I guess it's also like because it's so personal. I think that's the thing. It's personal to me, so you feel quite vulnerable.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and the role of the artist is to make people care about your work. It's like, well, why should we care about this? And it's kind of like almost your job to try to explain why we should care about your work and why your work is important and why it's meaningful and why we should pay money for it. I think it's for me, that's my opinion. So what is the biggest challenge of being an artist?
The biggest challenge? At the moment for me, I think, well, there's a few things. I think, because I have a baby, and she's 10 months, so she's a lot more obviously active, and she wants a lot of, playtime and all of, like, a lot of attention, which I obviously want to give her. So I think for me, at the moment, it's a lot of time. It's time to and I tend to like stay up really late once she's gone to bed. I'm like, right, I'm not going to create, and then I stay up to like 3 a.m, and then obviously I have to get up at 7. and then I'm knackered, and then like I have, because also we tag teams, and then I have a few days when I'm not doing anything and I just sort of sleep. But yeah, at the moment I think it's time. Yeah, for sure, number one. But then also I think it's a lot, I think like the fear of getting stuck or like that, I find that quite difficult too, because you're always evolving as a person and you're always changing. So like trying out different things, I love doing it, but it's also that thing of like, oh, I don't know, what should I do? Like, what should I make? Because you want to change, but you don't want to change, I guess, too much.
Yeah.
But that's a challenge for me too, because I brought, on my last art fair, I took some illustrations with me. And I think they did relate to the painters because it was the same object or the same sort of scenes. But I was a bit worried. I was like, oh, but they're on white paper and white frames, black and white drawings, and then it was like a little bit of color on them. And I thought, oh, is this too different? Or so that's also a challenge, I think, of like, or posting on social media. I'm like, does it all need to be in this exactly the same style, or can I try different things? So that, I think that's a challenge for me anyway.
Also because you're in many ways new to being scrutinized and kind of observed as an artist in your practice. It's like it's hard to figure out what direction to go in because you don't have a particular blueprint to follow. Yeah,
that's so true. And I spoke to an artist friend of mine and I was like, is it okay to change? And he was like, it's crucial, especially for someone like you who's in the beginning.
Yes,
you have to change, and everyone changes. But I think that is that's a bit. I was like, and then I spoke to someone else. She's like, maybe don't do a complete U-turn. And then I'm thinking, well, why not? If my direction goes in a different way, then. But yeah, I think that's a struggle because I'm then like, oh, I don't know if this is too different from this, and I tried some new colorways on the last fair actually, because I did this little piece of like a woman on an escape button paddling away. And then I couldn't decide on the color, and my partner was like, just do a different color. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I posted on Instagram. I was like, what? So I did 2 different colorways, like one with peach and blue and one with purple and turquoise, I think. And I asked, which one should I do? And then the one with the peach and blue got the most votes. But even then I was like, well, I don't know if I should do. And then I did, and I was really happy I did, actually, because it sort of felt quite freeing to do a different, because I know when we met at that art, it was all very purple.
It's very purple, yes.
And a lot of kids are like, is purple your favorite colour? And I was like, well, I like purple, but it's not. I have many different colours I like. So it was quite nice, actually, to do a completely different one. And it turned out to be my most popular one at the last fair.
So the interesting thing about that is that you are at the point in your career where you can try different things and it's not going to affect you in the sense of like, it's not like, and this is something that I'm always really, really interested in with artists in general, is that like, you have not built the kind of audience yet that is paying for your work at the point where you have to do a certain thing. So you are well within your rights to do whatever you want in any way you want. And now is your time to experiment, because in the next 12 months, your career will take off and then you won't have the time and the ability to do it in the same way, to experiment in the same way than you do now. Because at the end of the day, like once you get that core audience that's going to expect a certain thing from you or want a certain thing from you, you're not going to be stuck doing it necessarily, but there will be like a blueprint set for yourself in terms of what your work you're going to create. So before you get to that point, before you realize what it is yourself, you need the time to experiment and try different things and be like, oh, I'm interested in this. Do you want to do this?
So yeah, that's a really nice way of thinking about it, actually.
That's just my opinion. That's just the advice I would give to anybody who is like at kind of like their beginnings of a career, because like it's hard because like you want to be super successful and you want to be like, oh, bam, this is my aesthetic, this is my style, people are going to pay me for this. But then that is also very much a trap, because if you get bored of it, you're going to be stuck doing that. You're not a factory, you're a person. And I think unless you want to be a factory, and that's the kind of commercialization you're going for, you want to change and grow and evolve, because you change, grow and evolve, but your audience will change and grow and evolve as well. That's
so true. And this is actually what I thought when we met, when it was so purple, and I thought, have I like painted myself into a corner now with this all purple? Is this so I guess that is because that is a fear for me too, that I'll get stuck on something that I then, because I feel like I change so much all of the time, like sometimes from one day to the next. And like when I go to exhibitions as well, like that is another thing, like you see so much, or at the art fairs too, you see so much different amazing work and you get so inspired and like, oh my God, that's amazing. I now want to try abstract art, which I've never done in my life. It's I guess it's good to give yourself the freedom to play and explore.
Yeah, you have to, and I actually have, as always, because that's all I have. All I the only people I talk to are artists at this point. But I have a lot of artist friends that I can send in your direction if you want to talk. I want to discuss kind of anything to do with art in terms of like community, because I think these questions that you have and the kind of feelings you have are, very valid, and everybody has them. So I feel like maybe talking through them with different artists that you don't know, especially, would actually be really helpful to you. Um, and kind of like ask people how they sailed on a style,
That would
or
be
what they try to
amazing.
do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got plenty of people I can send your way, and because yeah,
Oh, that's
absolutely.
so kind.
There's
Thank
at
you.
least another
Thank
70 that I've interviewed, so that's 70. Um, you know,
70.
70. Yeah, this is episode 72, 3. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said 17.
No,
70.
no, 70, 70, 73. Yeah, that's what I'm currently on at the minute. Yeah, get to 100, then I'll quit for a while. 6 months, I think I'm
Sorry, what
going
was
to take.
that? You take a break at 100.
I think I take a break at 100. Don't quote me on that because I say I will, but I might not. We'll see if I make it to 100 fast. But okay, so let's get into your work. At what point did you realize you can actually have a career as an artist?
At the other art fair.
Is that really?
Yep, that's it. Yes, because I hadn't done it because I'd done well, like I said, like I've done, I did some weddings invitations for a friend that she paid me for, and I did some commission like portraits or collages, illustrated collages, a few years ago. Again, like through a work colleague who then, and it's sort of I did a few because different people saw them and things. So, but it was never anything. It was very sort of spread out. So I just thought, this would be great if I could do this, here and there. And then, it was when I applied to the other art fair. So in October last year, when I had my first show, that I realised that, because I saw that it was a possibility. I genuinely didn't. I obviously knew that. I know that there are artists that are very successful and live off their art, but I just didn't think, it felt like it was a very sort of far away dream, and then but it was there, and I think I sold 8 paintings there or something, which was amazing,
absolutely incredible, but also not surprising as well, to be very honest. Not surprising. It's not surprising.
Thank you, but it genuinely it was there because because and it was so many artists there as well, on like all different levels too. So and that was last October that I realised it. And I remember there was a guy who came as well to that show, and we were talking. He's come to like all of them, not to see me, but I've seen him at all of them, and he was really lovely. And he said, "Oh, so this is your first time?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Oh, congratulations! Now you're officially an artist or something." And I was like, "Oh my god, wow, that's so cool!"
Yeah.
I didn't know. And I also didn't know how to go about. I think it's such a great opportunity to like have, because where else would you have your work exhibited for that many people to see? So that was when, like, I thought I could be an illustrator because in graphic design I did graphic design and illustrations. So I thought, maybe I can like carve out an illustration career somehow, and rather than like, because quite often clients would come and they would want an illustration in a specific style, so it wouldn't necessarily be my own. But I thought, maybe I could, find out a way of doing my own illustrations and maybe like incorporate that into graphic design. But I never really thought that it would. I thought it would be more like in combination with more graphic design and some illustration.
Can you describe your work for those people who may not have seen it?
Yes. It's basically, I think I said it, it's sort of sounds a bit, I don't know, not morbid, but it's like my brain on canvas is probably the best way I can describe it, I think, because it is just things I'm going through. It's kind of like a diary, because I've never really, I know I kept a diary when I was like really little, but I've never kept a diary. And it's sort of, and I've always drawn everything every day, all the time, like things I'm going through, things I'm thinking about, something I hear that I then get like a vision for, or like an idea for, that I draw. It's like a way for me to sort of process my feelings and emotions, I guess. So it's, how would I describe it? It's like scenes with a person in it. But that person isn't necessarily me. She is a woman, but she's not. And I mean, it comes from my mind, but it's also, I think I like try to not explain too much of what's. If someone asks me, I say, well, for me, when I painted this is what I was going through. But it's also really nice if someone goes, oh, look, that's me in that scene because of this. So I try to not, like, I don't, unless someone asks me, I don't go, so this is the reason behind this painting, because I like for people to sort of work out their own connections to it. But yeah, it's all things like quite personal to me.
Yeah, because I put here that your work focuses around an anonymous central character that you place in different scenarios to discuss different ideas and topics. Like, are there any particular topics and themes that you're particularly interested in exploring in the work?
I guess, well, there's a few things. The reason someone asked me actually at the last half of what could, because she's very curvy, the woman, and like that's something that only a few people have sort of commented on, but that to me is a really important part of it, just because of the sort of pressure on women to like look a certain way, but then like have kids, but then also look like a teenage boy with boobs.
Yeah.
So that's the reason behind her having like a normal body shape. And then like, yeah, I guess she is on her own a lot. Which, yeah, but then also I think because someone said to me on one of the fairs that she looked at, it was the really purple one, and she looked at because I had lots of small ones, so it was like very, very, very many little purple paintings, and she looked at them and she was like, oh my god, at like the first look they look quite like really happy, but then when you actually look at them they don't seem so happy, which I'm glad that she saw it, because that's also they're not always maybe what they seem to be.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I love about them. So this is the reason that when I saw them, I was like, this is interesting to me, because it's all very like gilded. You look and you're like, oh, these look really vibrant and interesting, but when you look at them closely, you're like, actually, this is telling a very sad story about this anonymous character who's in all these different scenarios by herself mostly. I particularly like the image that comes to mind that I remember the most is the one with the wine glass, where it's got the happy banner behind, and it's like she's really sad. She's meant to be happy, but it's sad. It's like, is she alone at a party? Is she by herself? You know,
She's
is somebody left her? And I love stuff like that, because it's like, it's honest. That's what your work is. Your work is very honest, but it's also very, what's the right word to put it? It's honest, but it's also, it doesn't give anything away. It's universal. That's what your work is. And I think that's the clever part about your work, which is what I love, is that anybody can look, whether, you know, it doesn't matter who they are, they can look at your work and be like, oh, I felt that before. Or like, oh, I relate to that, because I think it's really interesting. It taps into a lot of universal themes, you know, whether consciously or unconsciously. I think it's really cool, actually, personally. I think it's really, really interesting, especially because the character's anonymous as well, which I think is like, is that deliberate?
Yeah. I mean, I know she looks exactly the same in all of them. She didn't really in the beginning. I had a few different ones, but it tends to be like the same looking woman. But she isn't. She isn't me. She is basically anyone that relates to her. But that's really nice that you say that, because it's it's just really lovely. So that's my favorite thing, I think, if people can relate to it.
Yes,
you know,
in the
next
way. Question that I wrote, and I was like, that's exactly what it is. So yeah, so I put here, I mean, I'm reading from my notes, as if people don't know what I'm reading from. So I put, when I look at your work, the funny thing about your questions is that I wrote your questions really strangely, as if it was an essay as opposed to like questions. I did a bit of like, oh, this is what I think about your work, which is not what I normally do. I normally just write questions. I've actually got like little mini paragraphs there, because I put here, I don't know why I'm reading back to it if you haven't already read it before. But I put, when I look at your work, I think of the term quiet desperation, because there is always one character in most of your images, and it seems like they're lonely. That's what I was interested in, this idea of like loneliness, like, or kind of like the duality between loneliness and independence, because I feel like that they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Like, is that a particular theme in your work?
Not necessarily. But because I mean, in the beginning she had friends with her. I think because I guess because you're always on your own, really, aren't you? Like, in the end, There's you're just always with yourself and on your own. But I don't know. I mean, I actually don't really know how she's ended up being just her in all of them. I'm not sure.
I think for me it's interesting because it's almost like the scenarios are, because as you said, like it's almost diaristic, but it's not autobiographical. It's based on feelings as opposed to actuality. I think because of that, it makes the images seem a little bit odd and a little bit surreal, but also still very relatable. And I think that's kind of what's interesting about the work, is that it's very ambiguous, but deliberately so, but not so much that it's, oh, we want you to guess because I don't want to tell you. It's more like, this is not what I've felt, this is not what I've thought, this is what I've been through. Can you relate? Without you actually saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, you put it much better than I would have been able to, I think.
Because all I do is look at art every day. That's all I do, is look at art and think about it and wonder what I think about it. So why do you think that people enjoy viewing figurative art? And do you think that art that is more personal to the artist is more interesting?
I think, well, for me personally, I like to sort of wonder what goes on in the picture, I guess, for sort of the same reasons that you just mentioned. And I also, it makes me think what else is happening, or what's the scenario, or like, can I relate to this? And I think, and sort of like when I look at it also, like I often wonder like what is going through, like what was the painter thinking or the artist thinking when they were making it, and also like what is this person going through. And then sorry, what did you what did you say the second question?
The second part of it was, do you think that art that is more personal to the artist is more interesting?
I think it's definitely interesting to find out the story behind an artwork, for sure, or the reason why someone created it. But I think also, like, ultimately, I think the art that I find the most interesting is the art that connects something, like that I connect with on a personal level. Even though I think it's great to know the reason behind it, but I do like when the art that I like the most is whatever I feel like personally that I connect to, like with my own stories and my own experiences.
So what kind of art do you actually connect with? Like, what kind of intrigues you in terms of the art that you see?
So much different art. I mean, then, but yeah, I say that some of it's, so basically there's another, I think you know him, there's a guy at the other art fair, Johannes, who does all of the square. Yes, I love his art. And at the one that we met at, the one in March, we were talking, and he was like, he had a few pieces and he was telling me the stories behind them, and there was like one specific one that I really connected to, and like your own journey and taking the step, and it was just this little figure like just taking a step out of the box, and that was the one that I could relate to the most, and so I really connected to it. And there's another artist that years ago, Richard Culver, he had this like massive painting, and it was like white grey paint on a big canvas, or like really sort of just messy brushstrokes, and then it said, but this actually, yes, okay, so but then it said like scribbled or like written, I loved you, and then in like brackets but in white, so you could barely see it against the paint, it said, you just couldn't see it.
Oh,
and it was super nice. Clever.
Yeah.
And then I heard the story behind it, actually, which made me love it even more and connect to it even more. And I remember ringing up his agent. I was like, I really would love to have this artwork. And it was super expensive. I think if I had that much money to spend on art, I would have gotten it. But yeah, so that was the story behind it. And then also, I guess the story behind it made me relate to it even more, even though I did really like it before I knew the story as well.
What's really interesting is that both your work and Johanna's work is very much like figures in a box.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah.
Which was really interesting because, like, when you said, oh, the figures in a box, I'm like, that's exactly you describing your own work. Like a solitary figure in a box doing something.
Yeah. I've never thought of it, actually, but because I've always thought it's so different because his is very like minimal. But yeah, it's true. Yeah. And it's all got a story behind it.
Yeah. That's funny. I'm like, that's why you relate to it, because it's actually the same thing, just in a very different form, in a very different context, and a very different narrative way. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the beauty of art, I guess, and the beauty of meeting a lot of different artists is that you realize you're all kind of creating very similar things, just through your own perspective and your own lens of life. And I think that's what the beauty of art is.
Yeah, I do as well. I do as well. But then also, because sometimes you just see something that you can't explain why you love it so much.
Oh,
As
yeah,
well.
absolutely. Absolutely. Although I feel like there's always a part of you that knows. That always has to be a part of that. Like, even if like subconsciously, that's something that you'll know.
Yeah. I know I went to like years ago, I went to Dali.
Wow.
There's like a Dali museum in London. I don't know if it's
Wow.
still here. I think it was a Dali museum, or maybe it was just an exhibition. But I went years ago because my parents were over. And that he has this like massive painting that's, if you stand close to it, it looks like a naked woman from behind, like looking out a window, and then you back away from it, and it sort of morphs. I've had dreams about this painting, and
Wow.
it sort of morphs into a pixelated face of Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, and it's just I've been obsessed with it since I first saw it. But I think that's more of just like how, like my mind was blown. It's like, how did someone create this?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool though. And also I think that's to me, that's really cool because it's like the idea of, the kind of, obviously, I guess the very literal reading of that is that like the closer you are to things, they seem very different to how they are far away. And it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. Like that, like just playing with like the sense of like people's perception is always interesting through art.
Yeah.
Because, to create something that's realistic or at least kind of real in some way is hard enough. But to create something that's going to impact somebody is even harder.
Yeah. I did this one. I was just thinking about when you said when you look at things close. I had this one painting at the last fair, and it was like a crocus in a vase. And then it just looks like a crocus flower. And then when you look at it close, it's got, instead of like is it called the pistil out of a flower?
Yeah.
It's got a little fuck you hand. And that
Ah.
was so my boyfriend's aunt came. She's like, I'm very drawn to this flower. And I thought, I need to make sure that she's seen it. And I was like, have you seen the little hand? And she's like, no. And then she looked at it and then she was like, oh no. Hang that on my wall.
How you can, well, why not? End of the day, it's a great idea. But that's what I love, is like the idea of like you subverting the normal, like you're subverting what you expect. And I love that. I think that's really interesting because like as an artist, you had the control to do that. You had the control to be like, oh, actually, I want to change this and I want to do this. And like, how important is it for you to kind of create your own world for your work?
Oh, it's massively important. Because I feel like I've always found that since I was a little girl, I sort of live in my own little fantasy world in a way, not in like a delirious way, but yeah, no, it really is. Well, I don't know, but no, it is, because like it's sort of just create what you want to create. I love doing that. And also to not necessarily, although I know it's really precise and I'm super particular about like the lines and all of this and the colors, because I want them to be in a specific way, but it's also, it's not necessarily reflective of like reality, if that makes sense.
So one of the main noticeable points of your work is the color scheme. Obviously, when I first saw your work, it was very much pink, purple, and teal.
Yes.
And obviously now it's changed a bit here and there. But like, how important is it for you to have a specific color scheme? And how do you come up with the color scheme?
Well, the color scheme actually came from my niece.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I have my oldest niece. She's 9 now. But when she's really into drawing and illustrator. So we do that quite often together. Well, actually all the time when we see each other. And we were doing it one time and she decided that we could only use these, the highlighter pens. Are they called highlighter pens? Yeah. We could only use highlighter pens to draw. And they basically come in like yellow, purple, teal, like green, blue, and pink. So we only use those ones to draw. And then I just really like the color combination. And I thought, I'm going to start using this in my art. And then so I did. And then it sort of went very purple. Yeah. And then I thought, no, it's too purple. I want to change. No, I like to stick to a color palette, but I feel like it's changing maybe a little bit.
Yeah, so it's going to change. So that's the thing. The whole point is that, as we said earlier, that you want to evolve, you want to change, you want to try different things, you want to add some odd, interesting colors that you haven't used yet. And actually, like, what is your favorite color to use currently?
Favorite color to use currently? I'm really enjoying peach at the moment, actually, and more muted colors. I've liked. I started using my Posca pens again just like last week, and they're super bright. But painting wise, I've actually, and I think I did that for the last outfit too. It was in the same color scheme, but they were more muted, and I like that. I think I did this big flower painting last year, and it was in like the pink and the purple and the teal, but it was a lot less like vibrant. And I really, I like that. It felt a bit more like me as well. Because I guess, I mean, I know you don't have to like look like your art.
No.
But the neon-y felt like the neon colors I'm less drawn to now.
That's interesting because it's like
sparks of neon I like, but not like full on neon, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I feel like sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes some artists rely upon bright poppy neon colors to attract attention to their work that may not necessarily be as strong, but because it's about just the color as opposed to being about the substance behind the actual image itself.
That's what I felt was when we met. I felt it was too bright. I thought, oh my God, people's eyes are going to be hurting from looking at this. But because I actually felt like I don't know the opposite, but I felt like I didn't want it to be so bright because I felt like maybe it took away from, maybe the color was all that they saw then.
So that's interesting because yes, I agree completely because that's really how I remembered it. The very purple lady.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's perfect because the whole point of the work for me when I saw it was that like bright colors, dark subject matter. You know?
Yeah.
And for me, like that combination has always worked so well when you look at anything in pop culture, especially that has that kind of like the gilded edge to it, like the gilded. No, wait, that sounds weird. I can say something that sounded weird. Like when you look at something that looks really beautiful, but actually underneath it's not quite, the kind of faded glamour, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it works really well, and it works really well in your case for the really interesting color palette. And also for me, like purple is a very unnatural color. We don't see it often in society, which is why I think I was drawn to it because it's such a strange color to work with, and I don't see people do it very often.
I do love purple.
Like personally, I really enjoyed it, but I also definitely understand and like why you'd be like, I need to move away from this, or like, I should change this, or at least should think about doing something different. I can understand that because you don't want to be boxed in.
Yeah, I mean, there's always some, even in the new ones, there's always a bit of purple in them. It might not just be the whole canvas, might not be shades of purple and bright pink.
So, I've been obviously very, very fortunate to see your work in person. And I'm very impressed, as I told you when we met, and I still am impressed at the paintings because they look like they could be digitally made, like kind of because they've just done so well, and the lines are so clean and sharp. Like I'm still really amazed and impressed. But like, do you consider yourself to have a certain style, and is being precise really important to you?
Good question. I don't know. And I actually say this to people, I don't feel like I have a style. And then they look at my work and most of them say, well, I think you have a very distinct style. So yes, I guess I do have a style of painting and drawing. That's sort of always been the same, what would like slight variation. Just how I draw things, I guess yes, I guess I do have a style. Although I don't always feel like I do. I also feel like no, I guess I do have a style. Is it important to be very, very precise? Yes, it is actually. To me, not because I think things need to have really crisp lines and hard edges and like no color outside of the lines. It's just how I've always been. And I think actually the graphic design has made that even more so because it's because when I work with graphic design, it's like pixel perfect. It all has to be like on the millimeter. So I think that has actually influenced a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say absolutely. I think definitely with the idea of like bold lines, block colors, everything's very precise. Everything's very. It's interesting because obviously when I met you, I was like, this could be digital, as opposed to just like traditional painting. And like, is that ever a worry for you that people will just look in and be like, oh, this is just a digital piece of art?
Yeah, I mean, I actually I had never thought of it until a few people have asked. And they said, oh, so are these digital prints? And I'm like, no, they're paintings, they're acrylic paintings. But a few people have thought that they're digital prints, because I guess they look quite graphic and they're really flat, which is what I want. I want them to be really flat, and I have like these, like I have like the so called like a flow improver that I mix with my paint to get like as little brush strokes as possible. Although actually recently I've started, like in some of them they have quite thick brush strokes because I really enjoy like working with the textures. But yeah, some people have actually thought that they're prints, which I didn't. I guess because I know that they're paintings, I just thought, just assumed that, oh yeah, it's obvious that they're paintings. And also because it's it says something like, when I show them, it has like a little sign and it says acrylic on canvas.
People don't always read though. That's the thing.
I know, of course they don't. But yeah, it's not. I never thought about it until a few people mentioned it. Actually,
do you think that the work translates well online in terms of like being paintings? Because online, there's often no context at all in terms of like the images themselves.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm quite bad at Instagram, but when I do post, like I sometimes post like the process of making something, and then it's like showing that I'm painting it and things. But yeah, I don't know, because online I guess you could see even less, textures and brush strokes and things like that.
Yeah, particularly if your image is already flat in real life.
Yeah,
they're going to be even more. They're going to be flattened even further, because the one problem with the internet is that it flattens everything. Like if you've got a sculpture, it's flat. It's a two-dimensional space and light. So for somebody like yourself, you're kind of not doing yourself a disservice, because obviously you have to use social media, quote unquote, have to use social media. But it's like you kind of pay yourself no favors, I guess, without saying this in the painting. But then you don't want to keep saying that all the time, because you'd hope people would understand that.
No, I think the only way I can do it is when I post like the process of making a painting. But I don't know how I don't mind people thinking that they're prints either, really. In a way, I think it's quite, I don't know, it's quite nice in a way, because it then I'm like, oh, actually the color is really flat then. It must be.
But it achieves its purpose. It achieves a goal that you set out for it to be. Like you want them to be flat, so that's cool. So it's not a problem. Like if you were after highly textured painting, then you'd be like, oh, this is not working.
Someone thought it was a print.
Yeah, you'd be like, I'm trying to reevaluate my entire existence as an artist.
Time to add more paint.
Let's talk about the scale of your work, because your work is quite small actually. Or at least the images that I saw were fairly small. Like, what kind of size work do you normally create, and like why do you create at that size?
Yeah, they were very small. They were 20 by 20. The ones, the majority of the ones that you saw. I hadn't actually. So the first one on my first exhibition, they were all different sizes. I had like three small ones, 20 by 20. I had one really big. Oh, I say really big. How big was it? 60 by 80, I think, was the biggest one. And then I had lots of 40 by 40 and some 30 by 40, and then another bigger one. And then when we met, I had lots of small ones, and I had a big flower one in the middle, which was 60 by 80. And then on the recent show, I had a lot 40 by 40. So it's all different. It all varies, actually. I have a massive canvas that I'm really can't wait to paint, but I don't know what to paint on it yet. It's huge.
Well, what kind of scale do you prefer working at? Like, do you have a specific scale that you're like, oh, I like this particular painting?
I like 40 at the moment. 40 by 40. I'm enjoying the squares, because they're like big enough to. I like the small ones too, but they were just they look quite simple, but they took so long because there was so little.
Yeah.
But I like the 40 by 40 just because I feel like you can see more of the, like they're still quite minimal, a lot of them, but you have a bit more space, I guess.
Why square though?
No particular reason other than I'm enjoying the size.
No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a great answer. I'm just curious because typically when we think of images, we think of them in landscape or portrait. We don't necessarily think of them as square. Square is a very like olden Instagram thing.
Yeah.
Or like album covers or vinyl covers are like square.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. Square format is always very interesting to me personally because it's like a very even space.
Yeah, it is maybe that is it then. But I do like the square format at the moment for some reason, and it might change. Although the flower one, which was my most favorite to paint, I think that was portrait.
Fair enough. But I wonder like how your like the approach to your painting an image that is not square changes. Like do you find yourself like compositionally trying out new things if you're on a canvas that's not square?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it sort of has to be. I guess that is actually the thing that decides what size I paint it on is what I'm painting. I guess the most recent things I've painted have lent themselves to be on a square canvas, whereas I think something like the big flower I did, because it was so tall, and I wanted it to be on a lot of the canvas. I wanted to paint it on a portrait canvas.
Yeah, it wouldn't translate well to a square necessarily because of the detail that you wanted to include.
Yeah. So I guess I guess it depends on what I paint actually.
So what is your favorite image you've created?
I have two, I think, or maybe three. The first one is the disco ball. Which actually I don't want to sell. And it's not necessarily like that good. I look at it and I think technically it's not my best. But it's just because it was I mean, that is very personal to me. But it came from like I had some like unexpected news. So I was in quite a dark place when I was painting it, and I painted it as like a reminder to keep on dancing. And like my relationship to it changed a lot during the time. And I went through like stages of absolutely hating it. And now it's my favorite because of all of those reasons, I think. But then someone might look at it and just like a disco ball, and that's why they like it. But to me it's because that was what was going through at the time, and it was very much not disco.
Like that's actually, it's interesting because that kind of sums up, kind of, as we said earlier, kind of the idea of your work where like it looks like one thing, but it's actually something very different. And I think the great thing about your work is that it's very, as I've said earlier, like it's very reflective of life. Like you can look at somebody's life and think, oh, it's perfect, but you don't know what's happening beneath the surface. And I think your work kind of very much just kind of gives people the subtle hints of like something's not quite right. Like if you look at it it's almost like a reward, because like if you're going to take the time to look at this work, you'll understand it. But if you gloss over it, you'll think it's one thing. It's very much like as I said the other day, actually, like a surface of a lake. Yeah, only certain people are going to dive deeper into the work, rather than like look at themselves on the surface of a lake, that kind of thing. Which I like. I think that's really clever, and I like the fact that you are very intentional with that as well. That it's about your own life, but it's also about everybody else's life. It's about the human condition, I guess, in general. But you do it in a way which is like, I don't know, there's something so fascinating about it, because you could look at your work. So also the interesting thing about your work is I could look at your work now and have a very different opinion on it to how I did when I first saw it. Or like in 3 years' time, I might look at the same image and think very differently about that image. Like and the great thing about art in general is that the person's perspective in life at that moment in time would determine how they feel about your work. And because your work is so personal, like for instance, the image with the person with the wine glass, for instance, like to me right now, when I think about that image now, I think about something very different to how I did when I first saw it, because my life has changed in a different way. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know, it's just the idea of like your work is so reflective of people when they look at it. That's interesting to me. Yeah, I think that's clever. It's universal, and I think people creating stuff that's universal is always a good idea because it would always, 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 always be resonant with somebody. So yeah, it's a good thing. Probably why you're doing so well so currently, because your work is made to be consumed by people because they can relate to it. So
Oh, that's lovely.
so do you categorize your work into different series, or do you consider like each of your paintings to be like a continuation of like the protagonist's journey?
I think it's not a continuation. It is and it isn't, because it keeps being things I'm going through. But it's not necessarily where you look at one piece and then the next piece is, oh, so this happened in this one, and now this has happened. But so in a way it is, because it's like my own journey. But also I don't necessarily paint it in order all the time.
Yeah. No, it's not linear. It's not like this is the start, this is the middle, this is the end. It's like
no.
Yeah.
There was one, I did the one with the peach with the woman on the escape key, which is like one of the newer ones. That one I thought I could maybe make into a series. I haven't worked out exactly how yet, but I think I might do that with that one.
Because that fascinates me, because I feel like just the nature of the work itself, like there's so much you can do. The possibilities are so endless because you have a visual. Like, I know maybe you don't think you do, but you have like a style. But you have like the building blocks. You have a character. You have scenarios you can choose. You have a color scheme. It's literally just all about like, what do I want to say today? And then you can create a body work. But the interesting thing is that you could also do commissions, or you could also kind of work with brands and clients and collaborate with people like that as well. Like there are different options for you now, because you have, in my opinion, you have a style. At least you have some kind of cohesion. Or you can just completely destroy it all and completely change and do something completely different tomorrow. The ball's really in your court, which I think is actually quite exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I would love to do that. It's definitely, I've always loved drawing people. So I think that, yeah, I do feel like I have a style. I do and I don't, but I know I do. But yeah, and that would be. I actually did an illustrate. No, it was called 28-day illustration challenge. Through Inky Goodness, where we got like a few like set briefs or creating different things for different companies. Like it was a packaging design brief, and there was like doing illustrations for a restaurant, and then creating a mural. And I kept the woman in all of them, so she just comes back into all of the things I do.
So that's interesting though, because it makes me think about like branding, and it makes me think about obviously your background in graphic design. Like it does lend itself very well into your work in terms of like where you could go with it if you wanted to make it more commercial. And then it's also like you have like the painting side, which you're currently doing, where it's like it's personal, and it's about the life experiences, which I think is absolutely brilliant. I don't know, I feel like there's so much potential for your work, and like it's going to be fun to see where you go with it, and also what you choose to do with it, because it's down to you at the end of the day.
Yes. No, it's very exciting, all of it. It's really fun. I'm really enjoying it.
That's what you want though. You want it to be fun, because it's not a chore, not yet at least. I mean, maybe at some point in the future.
I absolutely love it. No, I absolutely love it. I mean, I can lose myself for forever just painting and drawing. But that's always been like my thing. I just sort of completely close off, and then I don't know where the time goes.
We need to get to the point where you're doing it 7 days a week in a way that's convenient for you, and that's it's going to make you more prolific and more just kind of like, because I feel like you have a lot of potential, and I feel like I say this to like probably every artist I meet, but I feel like you have a lot of potential, and I look at your work and I'm like, you could do so much with this. It's just, I know exactly where I would personally like you to be as an artist, and I feel like you will get there, but I feel like, yeah, you have a lot of cool potential that you are absolutely gonna be able to achieve, hopefully.
No, I was just wondering, what did you say? Did you say what you would do with it personally?
Yeah, like so for instance, like I feel like even stuff like having the approach of like workshops and going to schools and like teaching kids, like in terms of like creating narratives and stories and using their own life experiences to create work, and just even stuff like that, or working with clients, or just creating your own artwork personally, but making sure you are making it and selling it on a scale which you can make a living off. Just like there's so much potential for your work, and I think it's not just the work itself, but it's also the messages within the work and behind the work. And you then can create commissions for people based on their experiences. Maybe like if somebody's like, oh, I've got an engagement, for instance, then you can create an image based on that for them. Like there's so much potential because your work is so universal. I think that's really what it is. That's just my opinion. Couldn't do any of them, but I just feel like there's a lot of potential. I don't know.
That's so
and I like it.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So do you have any particular creative processes for your work? Or like, do you have any kind of routines that you like to follow that help you focus on making work?
I always have my sketchbook with me. I've just got a new one the other day. So I always I carry it, like I always have carried it around with me. And so I just draw things down all of the time. So I sketch in that, and then when I make a painting, I basically pick whatever sketch I want to make into a painting, and then I start painting it, because it is like my diary. My sketchbook is like my diary, so I just sort of always have it with me. And then
why keep a sketchbook though?
Why keep a sketchbook?
Oh,
because I love it. Because I love drawing. It's just my way of processing everything. So I feel sort of, if I ever forget it, I sort of need to go and get a new one.
I just find that really fascinating, because I feel like sketchbooks are the kind of thing that I don't think. So sketchbooks are interesting to me because I feel like sketchbooks are where the ideas generate. They're kind of like your place to kind of, I guess, illustrate your mind or your thoughts and your kind of feelings and emotions. It's like it's a way for you to process. And then from that processing becomes the work. Because I feel like a lot of the artists that I talk to who've got sketchbooks seem to be very, 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 very good at carrying them with them at all times, and also realizing that the importance of the small little things in life are going to make the biggest impact in their work. So like you could be in the queue for like a bagel, and you'll think of something, or you'll see something, you'll be like, oh, I have to write this down. Because you've written it down, you'll be able to create a piece of work from that, whereas like otherwise you just forget because you're busy caught up in life.
100%. I definitely find that it helps with, because you do. I think that's the thing, that if I think I'll keep this in my mind, it would just fall out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you ever do like sketchbook tours? Do you ever show your sketchbook?
No, I haven't actually. I've been thinking about, I mean, that's what I did with the sketches that I took with me in the summer to the other art fair. I brought some because I thought, actually, why have I not had any of my sketches here? But I think I might, because but no, I've never like shown them as such.
How important, I guess, and I've actually on the kind of, I guess, on the topic of showing work, like how important is it for you to show the process of your work, and especially like failed images or images that didn't necessarily work out well?
I mean, I did something. I posted something that was a massive fail on Instagram, because I had this idea that I was going to cut out some shapes and like almost make a little collage, which just was not great. I have sort of art, when I have art days, some art days I just have as like experimental days. Is that the word? Where I just sort of try lots of different things out, and then most of it I don't use, but I tend to always get some sort of ideas from it. But I think it's always fun to show those things too. I don't think I do it enough because I'm not that good at social. Well, I'm not that like much on my social media, I guess. But I think it is always really good to see. I know there's an artist I follow that had posted something that she thought was a fail, and then I like read the comments, and then someone was like, "Oh, this is." I mean, she's a massive artist, and then someone had written, "Oh, this is so nice to see, because my son studies art and he thinks that everyone just gets it perfect the first time, so it's really great to see someone showing that that's not the case." I think it's relatable, because I think. And it's also just part of the process. I think it's very rare that you just sort of have an idea and then poof, it's perfect.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. perfectly executed straight away.
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like unless you've been doing it for a very, very long time and you
Yeah.
know exactly what your style is, or you know exactly what your abilities are, I guess, then yeah,
Yeah.
you probably could do that. Like if you're, I can say programmed, if you're programmed enough to have done it so many times, if you're like on autopilot, which then is kind of scary because you're not really creating the work, you're just
Mm.
going through a process. But once you get to that kind of that level, then I guess, yeah, you could do that. But realistically, the human element of art is they're not really knowing what it's actually going to become and the journey of
Yeah.
actually knowing what it is. And also like you as the artist looking back on a piece of work and being like, oh, it was this originally, and now it's this. But nobody will ever know that unless you show them. Like that must be like kind of
Yeah.
interesting as an artist to kind of see your own personal development through the work.
But yeah, I definitely think it's interesting to see. Um, and I think I'm also quite bad at documenting things because when I'm like in the zone, I forget to film
Of course, yeah,
or
of
take
course.
pictures. But yeah, I think I have actually a little like folder on my phone that's called Art Fiascos, where I've just I've just saved like where I have actually filmed and taken pictures of various not so very successful experiments.
Yeah, but I think the thing about that, I think the hard part about that is that you don't want to be taken out of the zone by having to then be like, oh, I have to document this, I have to photograph this, I have to video this. Because I feel like
Yeah.
doing those things changes the way in which you create the work. Having a camera on
Yeah.
you is going to make you very conscious sometimes, but there's a
Yeah.
camera there. And if you make a mistake, you're like, oh, people are going to see this mistake, or you're going to be like, I've got to cut this out when I edit. And, you know,
Yeah. I agree. I think that's the thing because I do try to document when I'm creating, but I do also forget sometimes where I don't, or I get because I do feel like it takes away from it. Like I have this little tripod that I put my camera on, but then I'm like, I need I need to like feel my hand, and oh no, there's a shadow, so you can't see what I'm doing, and all of this, and that so yeah, I guess that's a part that I find a bit difficult to like keep up.
I think it's definitely a relatable thing. I think a lot of artists, if they could, just wouldn't want to do any recording. They'd want to, because the whole point is that you kind of create in isolation. You kind of, as you said earlier, like it's very personal. It's kind of like almost like your sanctuary when you're creating work, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think, and having like a third party, whether it's a camera or somebody else there, isn't always help unless the person's going to help with the mood. And actually, what kind of environment do you normally create in, actually?
A second bedroom.
Yeah, so that's perfect. See,
Yeah.
that's perfect. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, no, it is great. I mean, I sometimes also if I paint on if it's a big painting and like I lean it against the wall, it's I can then sort of put my phone up on a tripod and just hit record, and then I just use whatever, and I forget that it's there. But yeah, I mean, I wish I could have a studio, but I can't afford one.
Not yet.
Not yet, not yet. But yeah,
In the future, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in the second bedroom but it's now a nursery. So, but yeah, paint on the bedroom floor.
So the thing that I love about that, and I'm always a huge fan of people doing stuff very DIY. Like you don't have to have the most space. Like to
No.
me, it shows your dedication of how much you love what you do, that you'll do it anywhere. Like you could go outside and sit in a coffee shop and create work. You don't
I
have to
do.
have you don't have to have a fancy studio with the best lighting, with the most space. You can
No.
create anywhere. And I think for me personally, I think that is such a good method of working because it means that like you can create anywhere, anytime, and it's not going to be a burden for you or a problem, or you're not going to be like, oh no, I can't, like, oh, the lighting is not right. It's like this is perfect. And I think that's
Yeah.
actually quite genius in a way because it opens up the possibilities in terms of
Mhm.
like just the ability to be able to create.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it's great to be able to create anywhere, but also saying that it would be nice to have a place to go to where you can just, okay, I'm just going to drop all of my paints here, and I'm just going to
Yeah.
have all of the canvases here.
Like a dedicated space in which you can be like, this is away from everybody. I can just concentrate and focus and get on with it and kind of live in this bubble for like the whole day. And then after this, I can go home and deal with life. I think it will happen. I think it will definitely happen eventually, like for sure. I feel like absolutely. I don't see why it wouldn't, to be very honest. I really don't. So I guess actually kind of along the same lines, one thing that I've spoken to a lot of artists about is the idea of loneliness whilst working in terms of like, because a lot of artists obviously always create in isolation, or most artists do. Like, do you ever get lonely whilst working? And if so, like, how do you combat that?
I obviously create on my own most of the time. I mean, sometimes I do it with my baby, but that's like more sketching and illustration and stuff, which is quick. When I paint, I'm always on my own because I need to really focus and I need to like be super precise. But I've always craved a lot of alone time. So I actually really I find solitude in it, and I always have. So for me, it's really enjoyable. Like, I love just shutting off and being on my own for a set amount of time and like have nothing. Like, I turn my phone off and I would just put some podcasts on, or, listen to some music. And yeah, I need it. But that's always been the case. So I really enjoy it, actually. But then I guess I'm not on my own outside of it. I think that would maybe be a different scenario. But I like to have a combination of both. So like when I do my art, I really enjoy just being in a vacuum.
Like, your art is created alone, but it's created for other people. Like, that's kind of interesting, the kind of dynamic between, like, for you to be able to, in a way, for you to be able to converse with people about bigger ideas and topics, you have to be alone to create that work to process first. Like, that's interesting.
But I would get really, because someone said, "Oh, why don't you bring your sketchbook with you and sketch, at the art fair, at the other art fair?"
Yeah.
But no, I would. That would terrify me. I'd get
really?
Yeah. It really would. Like, it's if anyone's like looking at what, and I say that to my boyfriend, if he goes, "Oh, what's that you're doing?" I said, "Don't look. You can't look."
Wow.
It's not finished. Yeah. So I get really, I guess I get really like self-conscious if someone's like watching and seeing what I'm doing. Now, once it's done and I'm happy with it, then I'm happy for other people to see it. But like the actual process.
So, how do you know when a piece of work is finished?
Interesting question. I just know, actually. That's a weird thing, because it's not, because I can keep going. And it's funny because we have my parents and my sister and we have like this little family group, and I always send things to them, and I was like, "What do you think of this?" And I'm in brackets, I'm like, "It's still just a sketch." and then they go, "Well, it's finished, right?" Or my boyfriend will say, "Well, isn't that finished?" I don't know, it's definitely not finished. And then I do more, and it might not be visible to everyone else what like the final touches are. It depends on what I'm making it for. But yeah, no, it's then it's finished, and then I won't actually look at it, because I then think, "Oh, what if I see something?" And then I go back. But I don't know, because once I've signed it, like that's my final thing. Like, it's finished, I've painted it and it's finished, and then I sign it, and then that to me is like, okay, stop, you can't, that it's done now.
That's a good cut-off point. You're like, okay, this is my limit. Once it's signed, it's done. We're not going back. That's a good idea. That's clever. Because otherwise, you'll be tinkering with it for like the next 3 years, and you're like, "Oh, it's not done yet. It's still a work in progress."
Yeah.
I created this 5 years ago, but it's still a work in progress.
And I have a painting like that I literally started 2, 3. I did. Yeah, there's one painting that I did with a friend of mine, or it's still, we started painting it together.
Wow.
And that definitely is a finish, but he lives in Berlin now, so we need to like finish it together. But then there's 2 other ones that I've done on myself. And I started, like, I must have started, one of them was like over 5 years ago, for sure. Wow. And it's still like, I still have it. And I've like added things to it, taken things off, and I don't know if it will ever be finished. I
feel like every artist has got one painting like that, or one piece of work where there's like nothing is never finished. Because you look at it again and you're like, it's because, as I said earlier, like your perception of life has changed. So the way you look at your work now would be so different to how it was 5 years ago. Like, you're a very different person. Like, the way you see the world is so different. What you want to say with your work is so different.
Yeah.
Really. And I guess actually that's a nice segue into the next question, which is like, how has your work changed as you've gotten older?
Older as in the last decade, or older as in the last year?
That's actually a good question myself. I would say, let's say the last decade, actually.
The last decade, I have to think. It's changed actually quite a lot, I think. Although it's sort of still, I've always drawn people. But I used to do a lot of black and white drawings, which I've actually gone back to do now. Like black and white small illustrations, and I've just started doing them again, but not in the same way. Yeah. So I guess how it's changed. I think actually the graphic design has influenced, like I mentioned before, it's influenced a lot of how I sort of approach a painting. Whereas before I might not have thought about compositions as much, or how I like place something.
But that's the interesting thing about being an artist, though, really, is the fact that you kind of shift and change, but then you can always come
Yeah.
back to things. And like
Yeah.
everything you've done is almost like your own personal history in terms of like where you were at that moment in time in your mindset was because you were
Yeah.
great. Like your work at that point in time reflected who you were at that point in time. And now you're a very different
Yeah.
person and your work is very different. And like
Yeah.
maybe you might go back to it because you might be feeling, the same old feelings, or you might be feeling, a certain way or a certain mood. So you might
Yeah.
resonate with that more. Like I feel like we always think about how people resonate with the artist's work depending on their mood, but we don't often think about how the artist resonates with their own work depending on their mood.
Yeah. It is fun to look back at, actually. And also I think you go through stages, don't you? Like I do that with everything, not just art. Like I go through a stage where I'm like, I love this type of thing. And I do it to the point where I'm like, I don't like it anymore. I never want to do it again.
I think that's natural though, because the whole point is that you have to know what you like, and to do that you have to do it.
But I do feel like I can still see. But maybe that's just to me. Maybe not. Someone else would look at something I did 10 years ago and be like, oh yeah, that's definitely, I can see that that's made by you. But I think I can sort of see. Well, that's because I am me and I know me. So I can be like, oh yeah, of course, because I was feeling like that, or I was really into this. So that's why. But definitely things like the little drawings are coming back again, the little illustrations, which I really enjoy. Like they're just small black and white ones of people.
That's so cool. That's really interesting though, how like it's kind of come full circle. And it's cool because like the way you approach it now would be so different how you approached it then. Because your career has changed a lot, and like your thoughts and opinions have changed a lot, and also just your artistic practice has changed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
So do you feel like you're part of a larger art community?
Yes, I do. Yeah, definitely, like more than I ever have been before, for sure. Yeah.
Perfect.
But that's thanks to the other art fair.
Of course.
So yeah, since last October, then yeah, definitely, because you meet so many people and I've made really amazing friends there, and you meet, people that go there, and you meet people through them, and yeah, it's been amazing, actually. And then you end up getting more, yeah, absolutely, I do, which is great because I've always wanted to. I've just never really have been.
No,
So
of
yeah,
course.
it's
I
amazing.
think that's the funny thing about artists. I think because a lot of artists are quite introverted. I
Yeah,
feel like they make they make it. What am I saying? Because a lot of artists are introverted, it's quite hard for them to often reach out to other artists because they feel like they're kind of pursuing their own careers, they're doing their own thing, they're getting on with their own work, and they don't want to like disturb anybody or kind of
yeah,
like pester anybody even. So I
yeah.
think it's really nice to see artists just kind of like communicating and getting together and talking and sharing ideas. I think it's a great. So
It's
like the art fair
amazing.
is a great idea.
And also, I find that everyone's so helpful.
Hmm.
I'm yet to meet another artist who's a bit of a dick. I mean, I'm sure they exist, but every person I've met everyone's been so helpful, and we all sort of like give each other tips, or like, oh, look at this, I found this article, like maybe you should apply for this because that really looks like you would fit into that, and that's
Yeah,
really wonderful to like have that sort of mutual support. It's great.
yeah, absolutely. Like absolutely, I completely agree. I've never met an artist yet, in considering that I talked to a lot of them,
Oh
who
yeah.
has been not so nice. Everyone's been absolutely more than wonderful, actually.
Yeah.
Everyone's been always kind, always patient, always willing to
I
give their
find that,
time. So
and
yeah,
really helpful. Yeah, exactly. Really
yeah.
helpful, which is, yeah, it's great. It's really beautiful.
So what has creating art taught you about yourself?
I mean, I knew this already, but I'm super self-critical.
Okay.
It's also taught me that I normally hate, and I mean really think this is terrible. So I guess it's taught me perseverance in that sense, because and I say this to my boyfriend all the time. Like I start something and I was like, this is absolutely shambolic. I'm never gonna, I can't be an artist because this is just so ugly. And look at this. And he's like, no, but you always say this when you start any piece of art. You go through this phase where you absolutely hate it. And then there's like a turning point, and I was like, oh no, but actually maybe it looks good. And then eventually I'm like, oh my God, look, came together. So yeah, I guess that like that actually, maybe it's taught me that I to not always believe my head when it goes, this is terrible, to just actually continue. Yeah.
Yeah, and also just the idea of like dedicate yourself to something and it will work out.
Yeah. Which I always have done. Like I always have done, like throughout my life. I do, but with art, I don't have the same thing with other things where I just feel like, oh my God, no, what is this piece of garbage? What am I doing?
I think maybe because art is it's such a trial and error. There's no like you don't know what you're doing. You actually physically don't know what you're doing until you're doing it, until it appears in front of you after you spent countless hours on it. That's the thing. Like there's no, unless you're a factory, there's no set way you're going to create, because the whole point is that it's very reactive to you at a moment in time. So the whole point is you don't know what you're going to do. It's kind of the fun of it, but also the stress of it.
Yeah. And I guess because I always have an idea of what I'm going to make. So like I have it so clear in my mind. But I guess until it gets, because when you're in the middle of it, it is going to look messy, and you haven't done all of the, the shades and the shapes and, the lines, and it's not finished. So it will look messy. And because at the moment my art is quite neat, with like the crystal lines and everything, I look at it and I think, no, this isn't how it looked in my head. But that's just natural. But then also I have like art experimental days where I sort of just go, okay, I'm just going to try things out. And then quite often then it ends up in the bin. But that is really fun, because I have sort of no pressure, and I'm just like, oh, I'm going to try some resin. Oh no, it didn't work out. It's all just blobby. But that is really fun when I just try different things that I don't usually do. Yeah, and then I don't have the same sort of pressure. Sorry.
Oh, but no, we can say, of course, yeah, because you need that, because you need to not feel, because you don't want to feel pressured, because the whole point of creating art is meant to be cathartic. It's meant to be like therapeutic. It's meant to be a way for you to process your emotions and your thoughts and opinions and kind of take time for yourself.
And it really, sorry.
Oh, no, continue.
No, I was just going to say, it really is that as well. Like it really is that for me. But I guess when I'm painting something that I have an idea of what I want it to look like, it's also a lot of self-doubt. Yeah, it's mixed up.
So how do you get over that self-doubt? Like, how do you kind of motivate yourself to get back on track and be like, this is actually going to turn out to be something good?
But I do actually just continue. Like, I mean, my partner is great with that. He's like, you always say this, like, it will be fine. Just carry on. But so I do, like, I have a little hissy fit. But then I because I love it so much, like it is very therapeutic for me to paint and create. So I do continue. And then it's so amazing when it turns around. It's such a nice feeling. You're like, oh yes, I know this now.
Yeah, because you get to, like, I imagine, like, there's a certain point at which you look at it, you're like, okay, yeah, this is going to be exactly how I thought it was going to be, or this is going to turn out to be a good painting. Yeah,
which is nice. So yeah, I guess I try to not listen to it too much when I have those thoughts. Yeah. And also take breaks. I take breaks and I go, okay, I'm just gonna, sometimes I've been working on something for ages, and there was a point like earlier in the year when I hadn't slept because of my baby, I think, and also I was really, really tired, and it had been like an ongoing thing, and I was on the phone to my friend. I was painting on this painting, and I just made so many mistakes that eventually I was like, actually, I'm so tired I can barely see. I should probably not be painting.
No, absolutely not. No.
I'm going to go and have a sleep.
I think taking care of yourself is extremely important, just in any aspects of life, but especially if you're like an artist where you're relying on your health to create work. Obviously in general life, you're relying on your health, but like you being able to sleep properly, you being able to have the stamina to sit down for a long period of time to do something, you having a focus and the energy to do that is really important. So you need to make sure you're looking after yourself so you can do that.
Yeah.
I feel like we don't really talk about it often enough, actually, to be fair. I think it's quite important that you look after yourself, because you're right. Like if you can't see properly and you're getting really small details,
I mean, it was a bit extreme, maybe. I could see.
About to say that, to be fair, I'm kind of concerned you can't see properly. I'm kind of concerned by that, because I'm like, you need sleep. Like that is bad. That's really bad.
No, it wasn't that I couldn't see. I could actually, my vision was perfect. But I was, when you're just so tired.
it's not good, and particularly if you're not sleeping properly, you've got a baby, like you're not going to be sleeping at all, to be honest.
Oh,
So
but she's such a good sleeper, though. That's the thing. I think it was like a bad patch week when she just didn't sleep. But she's been sleeping through since she was born.
Wow.
So that's, yeah.
Good.
But yeah, I think also because I do find that I can get so lost in creating that it's just all I do for a long time, and I just sort of forget everything around me. So, but I've been getting better at actually just, I think as I've been getting older, of just sort of like going, okay, well, I'm going to set an alarm for lunch.
Yes.
Or,
absolutely.
I'm not going to paint. I'm going to set a cutoff point at like 8 p.m. and then I'm going to go and have dinner, and
Yeah. I think putting like structure and routine, and having having like a routine, having structure, making sure that you are almost like you have, actually one of my artist friends said this to me, almost like as if you have work shifts in terms of like when you're going to work from and to. Because at the end of the day, like if you don't have that, you could be working on a piece 24/7, and yes, it would be great, but also no, it's not a good idea.
I
think like setting yourself boundaries, setting yourself routines, being like, okay, cool, so today I'm only going to work up to this point here, and maybe you're more productive in the morning, maybe you're more productive at night. You also have to figure that kind of stuff out for yourself as well, in terms of like, when are you most productive? So I don't know, I feel like being an artist is really like adopting a new lifestyle, really, because the way in which you live is going to determine the kind of output of your work. So it's about having to figure out the small little nuanced things, like what time do you want to wake up? What time do you want to go to sleep? What time do you want to create? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? All that kind of stuff. It's important.
And I think also it's good just in something like anything. Was it that they say that the brain can only focus on something for, I can't remember the exact time now, but like after a certain time, you're actually not being very productive. So
all about the focus. That's all about.
Well, it's like also what I'm doing design as well, and it's the same with painting. Like when you work on something and you just work on it, and you're like, I can't get it right, and then so often it's that you just need to get away from it from a bit and then come back to it the next day and be like, oh, I can see it now.
Because you're too close to it. You need to take a break. You need to step back and be like, cool. Absolutely. So I have a question for you from the last person interviewed, which was an artist called Lee Putman, who's an absolutely wonderful human being. His question for you is, what experience do you want the people who are viewing your work to have?
What experience do I want other people viewing my work to have? I think I said this before, but I love it when they can relate to it in like any way, actually. Like, I mean, it's great if it's positive. But also it really doesn't have to be. It's just, I love it when someone, because it's happened a few times where someone has looked at a specific painting and gone, oh God, look, that's me because of this. I love that. And I don't need to know like the whole backstory either, but like just when someone can sort of like recognize something about themselves in a painting, it's great. Like the escape painting was so much fun because so many people, the little woman on the escape key paddling, a lot of people were saying that, oh my God, that's how I feel.
I don't know if that's pretty amazing, or that's concerning. I don't know.
I know, that's what I said too. I was thinking that too. But then also, I don't know, it might have been, in a stressful situation, or it might have been like at a desk, or it might have been that they just wanted to go on holiday. Who knows? Like, I don't know. Probably
to be fair, I feel like the theme of like escapism is actually really integral to art, because art is an escape for a lot of people. For both the artist and the viewer. It's interesting to kind of consider that theme and play on that theme, personally. I
agree.
So do you have a question for the next person I interview?
Yes. So it's maybe a few questions in one. Okay, so what made you decide that you wanted to be an artist, and what inspires you and motivates you to do the work that you do?
Okay, so what made you decide? Right, so I put here. So what made you decide to become an artist, and what motivates you to create the work you create?
And what inspires you what inspires you and motivates you?
Rightio. So I had a conversation with one of my good artist friends, Ryan House. I feel like I mentioned him in pretty much every single episode at this point. But we had a conversation a while ago about skill and personality, and in terms of like kind of different traits that artists have. And the kind of question that arose out of it that we kind of were interested in debating about and that I like to ask everybody is, which is more important? Is the skill of the artist more important, or the personality of the artist more important?
I think both are important, but I think personality more so. Just of like how you, well, because it's so subjective, isn't it? Art. But I just think because you mainly create it with your mind first. And I think if you have a mind that thinks that, is like thinks in like an interesting way. Okay, I guess no, I think personality is more important than skill. Because I guess how you're thinking decides how you create art. And also art doesn't have to be like technically perfect. I think that painting that I mentioned last time, that with the writing on it, and I just love the way his mind was working. Like, that's why I really love the artwork, because something can be like technically perfect, and like a computer can make something that's really like AI can make, art that looks great, I guess, can do, but it's made by a computer. So no, I think personality for sure is more important. 100% I do.
Okay. So can anybody be an artist?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
100%. I think everyone is.
Okay. That's an interesting statement.
I do. I think everyone's an artist.
Do you think it just depends on if they're willing to tap into their creativity or not?
Yeah, I do. But like I also like, as a scientist is an artist in a different way. So I think everyone's an artist. It just takes different forms.
Oh, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Because it's kind of true when you think about it, actually. There's an art to everything.
Yeah.
I think of stuff like cooking or
Yeah.
singing or
Yeah.
even just like business. There's an art to that.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's good at everything.
No, I don't think anyone is. Well, very few people are good at everything. You sort of have different areas that you're better at than others.
So, in your opinion, what does it mean to be a successful artist?
I mean, to be able to, well, that's the thing too, because obviously, like, you want people to see your art and to hopefully connect to it, and hopefully, it's great that if people are willing to buy it. But I think it's more about like having like the freedom to express yourself, or like having an outlet that you can use. That's a positive outlet. And I mean, then if you can live off it, that would be dreamy.
Yeah, that would be the dream.
Yeah, that would be heaven. Or like that would be it would be such an amazing, to actually have it as a job. But then I also think if you have it as a job, would it then become more of a job?
Yeah,
I don't.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because I think, as I say to a lot of artists that I meet at the other art fair, especially, that want to be a full-time artist, that are part-time artists, is like, just because you become a full-time artist, you're not going to be making any more work. You're going to be doing more admin. The work that you're creating. The work that you're creating is going to be the same, really. It's just you'll have a lot of other responsibilities you haven't thought about yet because you'd have to think about that.
Exactly. My partner says it to me all the time, because it's like all you want to do is like paint and create, and it's like, but you also have to do like these, you have to build your website, you have to do this thing here, this admin thing, and I'm like, oh no, of course, that's part of the whole thing.
Like, I think for like a full-time artist, I feel like 70% of their practice is admin and marketing, because you're relying on yourself to market your own work. So therefore, because you need to market your own work, because you need to pay the bills, so therefore you kind of have to do that. It's not even a case of like, oh, I might just do that. It's like, no, you have to do that. If you want to make a living, you have to do that, because you're your own everything.
Yeah, exactly.
You're your own accountant, your own manager, your own social media guy, your own teacher.
Yeah.
You have to be everything. and it's like you have to also have all those skills. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, I think being a full-time artist is a great idea, and I would always say to people they should try it. But I also say, and I've probably said it to you before, and I've said it, going to say it to on every episode at this point, but like, there's nothing wrong with being a part-time artist.
No.
In fact, I think some people are better suited to it because of their lifestyles or because of how much they're willing to commit.
Yeah.
So, you know, and some people are just better at taxes, you know, let's be honest.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like, you know, let's be honest. People are just, they're just, yeah. It's not, I don't think being a full-time artist is for everybody. It's the dream for everybody, but I don't think it's a reality for everybody. Right. Anyways, the second to last question, which we'll be very happy to know, is, so they're both double-barrel questions. So, what would your younger self think about your work?
Ooh. How young are we talking?
There's no set ask. So you're the only person who's asked us that. That's so interesting because I didn't specify deliberately because it could be at any age. It's just your younger self.
Oh, a younger self.
You're the only person who's asked me that question. That's so funny.
Oh, but it was really hard to answer, actually.
That's why I ask it.
Yeah. Because I also think what I liked or how I made things when I was younger has changed to how I make it now. What my younger self? I guess because my younger self will still obviously be me, so I would know what the pieces meant. Because my future self would create them. But then also, I'm so self-critical, so sometimes, you know, I look at what I've done and I think, So it's a really tough one to answer because I'm my own worst critic at all times, and I sort of always have been. So I probably would both really like some of it, really dislike some of it. I think that I could do better.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I think it would be both, a mix of both. I think hard yes to some, hard no to some.
Hard yes. That's a very definitive hard yes. Very definitive hard no. No, it's a question. It's a question. I have no idea where the question came from, but it's a question I love asking people because I feel like it's so reflexive.
Yeah.
Because like, when was the last time somebody asked you that? And I'm like, because I like to try and ask questions that people that aren't asked typically. Or questions that are kind of a little bit more psychological into like why you do the things you do or make you think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's always my aim. So
what have other people, it's a really good question. What have other people said?
A lot of people have been like, oh, my younger self would love it, or my younger self would be horrified because I think it's so different to what they thought they were doing. So a lot of the time that's what people say. Or they'll love it, or like, it either kind of trends towards like they'll love it because I'm doing what I wanted to do, or they'd be surprised because it's completely different from what I thought they would be doing. But nobody's ever specified a certain age, which is really funny. So I'm just like younger because that could have been you yesterday because you were younger.
Could have been. I was just thinking, it could have been me 2 months ago.
But it's always interesting for me to hear how young people go, or like how young their mindset is when they think about that question, which I love. It's really interesting because it like a lot of my questions are vague for a reason, because the whole point is that I kind of want you to get you to think. I don't know if I actually do, but like that's the whole point of what I do.
I think they're really good questions for sure.
So the second part of that question was, what do you think your work says about you?
What do I think my work says about me? Also a very good question. I think it probably says, well, this also depends on but I guess it says that I am emotional. But that's probably if you ask me about, a piece of work, and that I'm like very particular in like how I want something, like very precise, I guess. I mean, it's also hard to answer because I know that I'm super emotional. And that I'm really like particular in how I want it to look,
But the reason I asked that question and put them two together is because like the whole idea of like self-reflection and the whole idea of like, because you're creating the work, you're so involved in the creative process. Like how often do you actually take a step back to think, how are people perceiving me through this work? Because all art is an autobiography in some way, even whether it's deliberate or not. every piece of art is about the person creating it in some way or another. And it's like, how often do artists actually look at their work and be like, what is this saying about me? Like, how am I coming across in this work to people? So that's the reason I asked the question, because I'm always interested in how people actually think about that.
Yeah. I guess, I think because what I said before with the, with like the colours, I sometimes worry that people will think, oh, it's just like this happy, childlike thing. But then I know that when you mentioned that, when you actually look closer, which is sort of what I like, to have that sort of contrast, which I hope comes across when you look at it.
Yeah.
And I do actually feel like it does, because most people that talk, I do feel like that. If when you look a bit closer, I do feel like a lot of the, I feel like people have said that at first it might look like this really bright, happy thing, and then you look a bit closer and you see other things.
Yeah, because like the brightness attracts you, but then actually when you get into the detail of it, you realize, oh, actually this is not even really darker, but this is more. How can I describe it? Because your work isn't necessarily dark. I wouldn't say your work is dark, because it's not. It's not like Mark Ryden. I don't know if you know who Mark Ryden is, but it's not like Mark Ryden where it's like really bubblegum, but when you look at it, it's kind of quite brutal. Bubblegum and brutal. Oh, that's a really nice way to put it. Bubblegum and brutal. But your work isn't like that. Your work is very much like, it's just honest and very vulnerable. That's what your work is. I feel, but it's like you don't notice that until you look into it and you kind of form your own opinions about the character and about situations yourself. I think, you're like a lot of artists. Your work is definitely one of those artists where, one of those types of art where you need to really look into it and spend time with it for you to understand it, rather than just glance at it and be like, oh, this is a nice purple painting, or this is a nice peach painting, But I like the idea of like, there's like a veneer where like it's all happy and shiny, but actually it's really not. And I love that. I think that's so cool. I absolutely love stuff that does that, because it just means that like you're thinking about what you're doing. If there's a logic there.
That is such a good description, actually. That's what I would like it to be viewed as. So that's amazing that you think that it is, because that is actually the sort of thought behind a lot of it, is that.
So the last question, which I'd be very happy to know, is a double-barrel question, which is, what are you currently working on, and where can people find more about you and your work? I'm working on lots of different things. I'm working on 4 paintings that are going to be made into prints as well, and then be sold as limited edition prints through Art Republic on their website. And I am also, because I did this branding illustration challenge, so I'm working on getting the things together for their digital showcase at the end of the month, which is inky goodness. And then I'm doing some more illustrations of my little playing cards. And I'm working on 2 commissions. Wow, you are a very busy lady.
It's great. But yeah, my Instagram is actually the only social media I really have. I've just joined TikTok. I have 1 follower.
It's a start.
No, 2 videos up.
It's a start.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I don't. Instagram is where I have most. That's where I have my things, and my website that I am updating, which will be louiselilynordh.com when it's done.
Louise, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me and for your
time.
Amazing.
Honestly, absolutely no problem. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. It was lovely to see your work in person, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it again in person at some point in the future.
Yes.
And thank you for taking the time. Honestly, I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely chatting with you.
That concludes my conversation with artist Louise Nordh. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions or comments about it, please send me an email at theflyingfruitbowl@gmail.com or get in touch on social media sites such as Instagram and Twitter. The Flying Fruit Bowl podcast can be found on a variety of sites such as Spotify, YouTube and Apple Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you like the show, please consider rating, reviewing, sharing, or subscribing on any of these platforms to help spread the word. Also, please don't forget to check out theflyingfruitbowl.co.uk for daily art inspiration, and if you're a creative, please get in touch for a chance to be featured or interviewed. If you would like to support the platform further, we now also have a Patreon page for monthly donations. Tiers start from £1, and more information can be found over at patreon.com/theflyingfruitbowl. Additionally, if monthly donations are not your thing, we also have a PayPal for one-time donations. I'll include a link to our PayPal in the show notes. Once again, thank you very much for listening today, and until next time folks, please stay safe.